So just introduce the session. My name is Lisa Reilly. Up until very recently, I was the director of GISF, the Global Interagency Security Forum. Very pleased to have with us today two representatives from Conducttr, who will be leading this session. For the first time I've ever really said this in a session, please get out your phones or your tablets or your computers, because it is an interactive event. It can be played on any. It's perhaps a bit easier if you've got a computer or a tablet with you, but it is designed to be used on a phone. So do come and play and join us. And also on the panel have Christina Wille from Insecurity Insight, who brings sort of real world experience as to how this game can have an impact on what we actually do and how it reflects security training and what we do. So maybe if we just go along and if you all introduce yourselves.
Absolutely, thank you, Lisa. So first of all, thank you everyone, and thank you for being on time as well. That's lovely. My name is Fernanda Elimelek. I'm the head of solutions in Conducttr. And with me is my colleague, she's head of customer relations. She's going to, very pleased that she's here because she's going to play a very important role today, which we will disclose in just a moment. And should I move to
Christina.
Yeah,
Christina.
so I'm Christina from Insecurity Insight. Okay, so yeah, so Lisa prompted me to say a little bit more. So at Insecurity Insight, we monitor attacks on health workers, and we also are a member of the Safeguarding Health from Conflict Coalition. And as part of that, we work with a range of professional networks, nurses associations, international medical students associations, and others to actually look specifically at what can be done to improve the safety and security of health workers, in addition to the work we are doing in collaborating with aid agencies, where we obviously look at the intersection between the aid agency and health workers.
Well, so I'll hand over to Fernanda, who will take you through the exercise that we're going to do today.
Fantastic. So first of all, I would just like to explain to you how the session is going to unfold. If I'm going to stand up a little bit. This session is going to be divided into a few parts. We are going to start with a brief presentation, very quick, 1-2 slides to explain you what is Conducttr, because as Lisa mentioned, it's going to be an interactive session. So you will be able to play today and interact in a full realistic scenario. And then we dive into explaining why we partner with GISF, what we've been doing with GISF, and which is also part of our mission as a company. And then we finally explain to you what is the session that we are going to run today. And we are very pleased to have you, Christina, because I think it's going to be fantastic to have your inputs as well. Just to explain to you how this is going to run, we will have moments for discussion. We will have pauses in this session for we all to discuss during this exercise. And feel free to act as you would in real life. This is expected from you, but everything will be shown in the screens as well, so you can follow up in case you don't want to use your phones. But if you like, please use them. So our mission as a company, I would say our first mission as a company is that we truly believe that experience is everything. But what does that mean in reality when it comes to crisis? In order for you to learn how to act, we truly believe that you actually have to go through a crisis, have to actually go and experience a crisis, because then the next time you will actually learn from your mistakes. You learn from your mistakes, and you most likely will not actually do the same mistakes again. So Conducttr is basically that. Conducttr is a simulation crisis platform that allows organizations to GISF to actually rehearse for crisis simulations. Because it looks like a real virtual desktop, is a self-contained virtual desktop where you have access to channels. You will actually have access to this now today. And they work as they would in real life. You will be able to send emails, access social media, such and such. But if we think about a crisis, what do we really deal in a real crisis? We deal with people. We deal with geographic differences, cultural differences, and much, much more. And this is what we are able to actually do. And this is why we partner with GISF, because our second mission is to make the world a better place. When we talk about making the world a better place, we are talking about dealing with this diverse, different kinds of conflicts that we have, different kinds of people that we have around the world, different crisis situations that we might face. So with GISF, just going to follow up. So GISF wants to ensure best practices across all its members. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa. I think you have more than 140 members right now.
About right.
How about so, and what they desire is to really assure that all these members have access to the latest tools when it comes to security practices, how to actually train for crisis management and such, and how to do that. So we created, in partnership with the GISF exercise platform, or as we call it, the GEP, that allows all member organizations to have access to a library of exercises. We are going to briefly show you what this library of exercises look like. And I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to show it to you live. So this is how it looks like. So right now we have a few exercises. So as you can see, we have a terror attack exercise, an abduction exercise, a monkeypox disinformation exercise, and a logistic crisis exercise. And as we create exercises with GISF, or we are subject matter experts, we are going to add these exercises to this library. And basically the way that it works is that all members have access to their own library and they can run individually their exercises at any time, at any point. You just have to click to load this exercise, and that's about it. They're able to run with their teams, with their organizations, their exercises according to, well, we have from easy to medium to hard exercises, depending on the training audience that you are trying to train in your focus. Oh, and I'm sorry about this. If any of you have any questions at any point, please let me know. I'm just going to show you how it works really quickly. So this is an example. So basically when they want to load an exercise, they just have to click load. They proceed. This is my own photo, for example. Each member organization has their own. They just have to go to the exercise. They will have an exercise guide explaining how to run an exercise. Basically, then they just have to share the link with their players. They click to start, and that's about it. The exercise that we are going to run today is quite different. And we decided to actually do, because it's not right now, but it's about lunchtime. We decided to do a fun exercise with you today. It's not fun, it's going to be a real exercise. Hopefully you're going to feel and experience it, but it's going to be focused on a slightly different kind of training audience. And let me go back to the presentation to explain you what we're going to see today. Everyone, full screen mode. Yeah. There you go. So the exercise that we are going to run, it's called Misinformation, Disinformation, Monkeypox Outbreak Crisis Exercise. Usually, when we talk about rehearsing for crisis exercise, we are focusing on crisis themes. We may be focusing on rehearsing, well, maybe your crisis team or whoever is dealing directly with the crisis, but there is a special people that are always in the field that are health workers, and they deal with communication a lot when they are basically on the field. But they usually don't have the tools. They usually don't know how to deal with this information, especially when they face a monkeypox outbreak in certain countries, in certain places in the world. So this exercise is going to be based in Nigeria, and you're all going to actually be playing as a Nigerian health worker today. So this is a completely different context, and you're going to be playing for Medicine Without Limits. It's a fictional NGO, and you'll all have to manage and handle how to deliver and deliver information as an unfolding crisis happens. It will work as it is in real life. It will start as normal day, and then a Friday will unfold, a crisis will start. There will be an inciting incident, and you will have to deal with this information. All of your responses are going to be anonymous, so don't worry, unless you change your profile and you like to add your name to, if you come to play, if you actually add and play, but your answers is going to be anonymous, so don't worry about that. But ideally, we would like you to actually interact, and then we'll have those pauses for discussion to understand why was important to handle that information at the right moment, and why it's important for field workers to know how to deal with that kind of information as well. Or you. Hopefully, there'll be some lessons learned too as well. So what you should expect, and this is what you should expect to any Conducttr exercise or GISF-based Conducttr exercise. So it's a medium-paced realistic exercise. So this means that it's going to start, and as I mentioned, as business as usual. There will be an unfolding incident. There will be an inciting incident. The crisis will escalate, and you'll have to deal accordingly until we come to a resolution. So you can see that we are going to have this session divided into mainly 4 main bits. No collaboration is mandatory in this session. Usually in other crises, you might have teams, if you like. In other crisis exercises, you might have teams, you might have syndicates. In this case, if you like to collaborate with one another, feel free to do it, but no collaboration is mandatory here. But we will have pauses for discussion, as I mentioned, during this exercise, so we can raise questions from you as well. There is a key person in this exercise, so you'll be able to email, right? You'll receive emails, you will receive all sorts of different kinds of information during this exercise, but there will be a key person that you can liaise, which is Kamala. She is your head worker. So if you have any questions or if you need any information, you can always reach out to her. And she's going to be played by someone in this in this audience today. And she's your main point of contact. But you will have other stakeholders as well that will interact with you during this crisis. And they might expect an answer from you. When it comes to exercise types, just to briefly explain to you, this is certain exercises that we have in the GISF exercise platform. They're more into like the exercising bit, they're more into the open world. Because this exercise was created to health workers, they're kind of in the more training side. They do have elements of open world. This means that you will be able to actually investigate the environment. You will be able to actually look into different websites, social media, to look for information. But there will be a lot of scaffolding. This means that we will help you along the way, because again, health workers, they needed that kind of help when we designed this exercise. It was a different, it is a different kind of audience. But in other exercises, you might find you completely free of doing what you would do in a real life crisis. So you will see that sometimes you will be engaged to actually reply to emails, for example, or act as you would in your life, or you might have multiple choice questions, for example. So you'll have a mix. I will be playing as the facilitator. Someone in the audience here will be playing as some of the stakeholders that you will interact today. But you'll be able to see everything through the screen. But sorry to mention again, if you're willing to play with your phones or computer or tablets, feel free to do so, because we are able to see your responses. They are anonymous, but we are able to see your responses on our side. And it's good because then we can have this discussion and when we have those pauses. So if you all can enter right now, this URL is https://demoroom2.cm.cr. I will wait for you in the other side. And I'm going to start showing another screen.
Did we have the link back? What was the end of the link, sorry?
Well, apologies, let me put it again. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm going to make it available for you. One thing that I need to mention to you, so you're not scared out of the blue. There will be media running. So this means there will be moments in this exercise where you will have breaking news or phone calls. We will, in order to actually just focus on one main place, you'll see them on the screen. But you'll also receive them on your phone if you want to just see them again. But mainly, the breaking news and the phone calls, they're going to be here on the main screens for you to see. Do you think there's audio here? Hopefully.
Ask our technical experts, is there speakers or anything?
There should be some connections.
Speaker is on the ceiling.
Okay,
Okay.
hopefully, yeah.
So hopefully I won't make anyone, I might turn it down a little bit.
We'll know once it starts.
Okay. So let's see if everyone, I can see, I think pretty much everyone is here. If you're able to access already, you will see that please feel free to interact with it. I'm going to start sharing my other screen here. I can see that we have some players already interacting. And what I'm going to start doing now, I am going to start sending some content to you. This means that, so I'm just going to click to start. So this is just a quick reminder about what your role is in this exercise and what you should do. So remember your location, remember who you are. We're Nigerian health workers working for Medicine Without Limits. So this means that you have to assess the situations as it progresses. You have to analyze and investigate information to prevent misinformation spread and a possible reputational risk to your organization. And also, no, it's okay. I think it's on the drive. Here on the drive. There you go. And also, if you have any questions, you can also communicate with your mentor.
I just have a quick question. What is Medicine Without Limits? What's their focus?
Medicine Without Limits is kind of our, it's kind of like.
It's obviously it's a made up NGO. Their primary focus is should we say, merging towards MSF? It's not
Yeah.
quite MSF, but it is
Yes.
very much primary healthcare and disasters.
Thank you.
So, as you can see, every time you receive a blinking red dot on top of a channel, and for those of you using a phone, there is a menu with a 3, and you will see there is a blinking red dot on top of it. It means there's something new to you. And you will be able to see what channel the content is coming from. There will be moments that you will see that this timer will change here, and you will see how much time you do have to actually take actions in your exercise. Sometimes you'll say, I only have these 2 minutes. Yes, because in real life, sometimes you only have a couple of minutes, or you might have more, but you will see that you will be able to manage. And also we have moments for discussion, so don't worry. Okay, so I just send you some initial content. Please feel free to interact. You see that you've received some emails. And I'm going to use this time because then I will expect you to, I'm not going to go through each one of the channels and each one of the moments every time. But I just want to highlight some of the channels that you have available for you right now. Well, social media, you're able to interact, you're able to actually access the different profiles to actually look who these people are, who they're coming from. You also have access to Facebook. The browser channel, you can actually see different websites. So in these websites, you might find important information for you during this exercise. Feel free to use the browser, feel free to use the search as well. You have the email channel where you can actually reply, send emails, compose emails, and search if necessary. You have the log channel where you can input your decisions, you can log your decisions. The drive, in case you need to look and maybe look on the how-to guide or remember your role. You have the InfoMac channel, which is a way for you to see where posts are coming from within a map. So I'm just going to quickly show you how it looks like. So we can see right now. I need to change probably the date. We will see that as the crisis unfolds, for example, we can see that we already have a post here coming from the region of Nigeria, and you will be able to actually see those posts coming as the crisis unfolds. And Social Watch is just another channel. If you are familiar with fake news, disinformation, and tracking social media listening tools, you can use Social Watch to listen to words on social media to find out what basically the public is thinking about your organization, to find if they're negative, positive, or etc. And that's it, basically. We are about to start this crisis in just a moment. I see that we have someone that just joined us. Hello. Just so you know, you might have to now follow us through the screen. I'm sorry about that, if that's okay. But you will be able to follow the discussions during the crisis. So now we open the room for discussion, for initial discussion. What do you think is happening?
Panic.
Yeah. I could see someone, because we are reviewing your answers on our side. I can see that a lot of you say you won't post anything. But some of you did say you will post something. So what do you think that should have happened here in this case? Well, some of you say you wouldn't post, but sometimes health workers just want to defend themselves in this midst of being facing with the adverse of they are being accused of doing something. But what really they should have done?
I think they should stay quiet. I think that first initial communication should be from the organization. So it's a central source of truth rather than the workers themselves, maybe causing more moral panic or being another source of disinformation.
Yeah, the challenge here is that if anybody posts something, it will be drowned out by the 50 responses afterwards. So it might carry one person, it won't carry the rest. So an official organizational response is needed, even if it's to say we're not sure what's going on.
Anyone else?
Taking responsibility for it without it being completely substantiated that it's the actual truth. So let the cat out of the bag, and it's not the cat out of the bag, what's it? It's going to be worse now.
I was going to say something similar, like they've taken the blame for it through this tweet. Like he's kind of said, oh yeah, we've done this, but there's no actual claim for it, but this kind of legitimised that.
A few points that we need to think about, and also if we go to this website from this organization that actually say, oh, came from a reliable source. Who is this reliable source? Is this information verified, as some of you said? Where is it coming from? So you actually all mentioned it right. You should wait for the right information to actually come from, and also the organization potentially should say something. We are investigating, but not taking the blame. The health workers that are on the field, sometimes they feel that it's their duty to say something, but this will just cause more conflict to it, actually, or bring even health workers to a point that they can be in danger. So what will happen next, and I'm actually going to show you.
But before we go
Oh,
on,
sorry.
do you want to add anything to this one, Christine?
These things have really happened. I think there's only been one sort of slight difference between how it's done in the simulation and how it tends to unfold in real life, is that it takes much longer for it to become ready news, because the official news sources would check that reliable source. But I think the stuff you're getting here, that will circulate on social media really quickly. So I think in real life, an added complication that we couldn't sort of play out here is to see, well, what do you do when you see this unofficial information, and who alerts who that this is going on, and do you need to contact an editor before it goes to the media? So these are these sort of added things to think about. But the stuff going out on social media and then it becoming their story, I've seen it so many times, in particular around Ebola, COVID, polio, that happens all the time. But yeah, so it really is a question, how do you respond? But perhaps even how do you actually find it? And I suppose that part can't be
Yes.
part of the simulation, or we'll be sitting here for hours searching for it.
In a way, I find this very funny, but also not that funny. I was involved. I was working in West Africa during Ebola outbreak, and it was wild. What the information was, but then thinking about, of course, there needs to be this whatever is a reliable source, but then this, who do the people trust? So that's why it's essential, but that during the time when there is nothing happening, so having the good relationship with the communities and knowing the key persons. So at the time when there's something happening, you know that these are the people. We have a good relationship and we can communicate and start giving and people will trust them.
And I think adding from the security manager's perspective as to why it's so useful using this sort of training is, we know in our head we shouldn't respond most of the time, but in our heart we're going, why are they picking on me? I want to respond to this, it's not fair. And I think this is why, as this unfolds, it's so useful from a security manager's perspective, because it gives you an opportunity to discuss, well, how did you feel about that? So it's not just about thinking about what's written on the policy paper, but it brings in those emotions as well, which is often the hardest thing that we have to deal with.
True. Fantastic. Anyone would like to bring another point?
Just to emphasize that we cannot fake news exists and we cannot fight it. And that's a fact. The only way to proceed in these kind of situations is a streamlined communication from the top level downwards, and of course directions to the staff that they should not at any point react to provocations like this. Otherwise it gets out of control, and we've seen it with COVID. We were working on a research for COVID misinformation on Twitter, and it's another project that has a presentation here, and basically the people that worked on just emphasizing to people that retweeted misinformation that it is a misinformation, were the biggest reactions were either deleted, blocked, or just offended more that this is a misinformation, you were trying to mislead me and stuff like that. So just stay away of direct conflicts would be always the best way to go.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So let's continue. So, as you all could see and you all said, what's happening now is a backlashing of both saying health workers were always on our side. Why is this happening? Is it true? And people are starting, as Christina mentioned, you can see that is like a snowball. People capture the information and they start to retweet, post, talk about it. So we now open for another moment for discussion. How do you think this information got out of that? As if you see, you receive an email with 43 cases confirmed, but it was an internal email, just us. And right after, they said that they received the information from the health board. How did they get this information? How do you think they got this information? Were you able to spot something?
The email address is wrong.
What else? Anyone got able to spot something in this email?
Yeah, this person from the other team is trying to, it seems as though they're trying to collect intel. So they're reaching out to different teams to try and figure out and make up their own version of events, probably.
Can you say that again, please?
Yeah, so this person from what's his name? Yeah, Curious is trying to gather intel from other teams and trying to make up his own story, I suppose. So he's picking certain facts from different teams.
He's fake anyway.
Yeah.
He's fake. He's fake.
She could be a woman.
He's fake. Sometimes this is not easy to spot. This is not something that field workers might spot. Fake emails. And also that they might just think it's a colleague that really is not receiving the emails. What really happens is that in certain situations,
Can you speak up? Sorry.
oh, sorry.
That's okay.
What happens is that in certain situations, people have malicious intent. So they just want to sell the information. So this malicious person might be just trying to get information to sell this information to get some sort of profit out of it, right? But it's not something that it could be easily spotted if you're not aware that you should be looking into the email domain, for example. It's not something that is commonly seen. The fact is also that Nigeria, the way that they share is that there's no cure. And this raises a lot of concerns for the public. When you say something there is no cure, the way that they describe it, it turns out to come to a very complicated, like the incident becomes way more complex, especially when you actually have to contain the narrative around what's going on with your public. And also, especially because the focus is now health workers are responsible for this. You have anything to add, Steve?
So with this sort of fake emails, I can't say I've seen that because that is, and that's just, I've not seen it because that's something that organizations would keep very private if something like that happens. But what I have personally seen, and which I think is in a sort of similar light, is people setting up social media accounts where they pretend to work for a certain organization and then they comment on particular incidents. And there was one particular case in the DRC in the Congo where someone had an elaborate CV on their Facebook page of having worked for the WFP and for the Lutheran World Federation, and then commented on a particular helicopter incident, and it just carried a lot more credibility. And we sort of looked in detail at their profile, and there were even pictures of little children of, that was a niece's 6th birthday. So at a first look, it all looked really quite credible. And I then contacted these organizations, said, did this person ever work for you? And they came back and said, no, never heard of it. But that's also one of these things. These profiles can be really quite convincing, and you need a lot of information about the organizations to work out this can't be the case. So I'm sure emails happen as well, but then people need to get into hack into the email system. But fake media profiles that then spread information in the name of the organization, I've seen it, and it's a real concern. And here the issue is, how do you actually find it? You know, how do you notice that there is someone with such a profile out there, commenting sometimes in quite private groups to start with before it sort of goes bigger?
It is difficult to pick out, but that's why the official responses are so important, that you keep it to one location, one person or group of people, rather than, because if this email went out to me, then everybody in the room got it. So if everybody understands that the spokesperson is not me, it's whoever we've designated will hopefully manage those situations.
I come from the compliance regulatory background, and I'm quite stunned by the fact that although you have like a process in place, you have a procedure in place, people should know that they're not meant to comment or to spread or to blindly click on something. Is there even hope, in your opinion, that anticipatory action like training, information before crisis happens will turn the minds around?
We hope. I think there is, I don't know whether you call it evidence, but we do see that the more you train somebody, the more they're likely to remember that something is there, and the more they're made aware of it. And I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that somebody goes on a training and then nothing is said or done about it until 3 years later when they have to go on the refresher. So part of the work that GISF is doing, so sort of engaging with Conducttr and sort of other things, is to make it easier to remind people about this stuff. So it isn't like a one-off training, but it's something that is repeated in different ways, and actions that are happening.
Yeah, and perhaps to add to that, what I think is particularly important that you experienced of making the mistake. And I can give you a very concrete example. So my organization puts out these attacks on healthcare, and we first started publishing on Ukraine last year. We started getting cyber attacks, and then I started to put in a whole sort of program around it. And we published a big new report for the first anniversary, and I knew this was going to be a critical time. So I had a special phishing exercise put in for staff to be made aware of what sort of links not to click on. And I was telling them beforehand, you know, we're publishing this report, there's a high risk. Don't click on anything. 3 people still clicked and provided their credentials in there because it looked like it was real. But I can tell you the meeting that afterwards, they felt so terrible that I don't think that they'd be the least likely to click in future. So that's why I think experiencing it in a safe environment, because it's a simulation, is the best learning experience, because you think you will never do it until you've done it, and then you realize how easy it is to make that mistake.
Yeah, I think really reiterate that, and in your comment about, you know, you just have one point of contact and you make it very clear that that's the spokesperson. But when you've got 83 emails in your inbox and you've got 27 other things happening, you know, it is really easy. And I think that the importance of the safe space to make mistakes. And I think one of the things with the Mission Ready training that Red R did was, it's actually sometimes quite fun to deliberately do the wrong thing, to actually see what does happen and see the consequences. So I think it's also an opportunity to experience what might go wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
And just the other thing I want to add, again, from sort of, while some organizations are creating these sort of communication security positions, the question that I think is still stuck in a lot of organizations is this email type, this fake email. Whose security responsibility does it fall under? Is it still the digital IT security people? And as traditional sort of physical personal security, are we getting involved in this? And you know, I think that will unravel more as we go along, but this is right at the beginning, we need to start thinking about, from a security perspective, who is responsible.
It's a collaboration, isn't it, between the two?
Should be.
Should be. Yes. Any other points, any other questions? Okay. Open for discussion. I know it was a lot to take in. A lot has happened. Were you able to find, is this image real? That is circulating online.
Confirm that. Yeah, we don't know where the source is.
Anyone could find it?
Say that again, sir.
Anyone could find the source of the image that cousin Nana is sending you, because he's really afraid that that image is real and the family is not going to take the vaccine, even if they come, even if it's coming. Right. So that image, you could find the original image on the CDE website. So in the CDE website, you have the original image. So that image that is going around is actually a Photoshop, is a manipulated image, right, to cause disinformation. And what happened before with the onion that you could see, certain media, like certain news outlets, they actually have lucrative engagement by doing that kind of like satire, but they don't measure the outcomes of what that basically what happens when they post something like that was caused by extremists. In that certain situation, and they even apologize later on, but in that certain situation, it causes a lot of disturbance, and people started to believe it was actually from extremists. Also, what also happened is that family members, and we faced that with COVID, a lot of like manipulated photos, people saying that they would become crocodiles or anything by taking the jab, by taking like the COVID vaccine or all the, but it wasn't true, right? We were receiving that kind of messaging. This is exactly the same thing. The image that is circulating online, it was a manipulated image to cause disturbance. So again, in this case, health workers should always communicate with Kamala or where there's a wait for a positioning from the organization itself. Anything to add on this point?
I mean, I think a general point is that it's quite hard to spot these things, right? To spot the wrong email, to spot that the picture is doctored. And that, I think, is one of the huge challenges, because a health worker is not a desk worker who spends their time at a computer dealing with messages. They're out there administering medical treatment. And that, I think, is one of the huge challenges, because suddenly you're requiring a health worker to have a whole new set of skills to deal with this disinformation and to respond accordingly. And that's actually putting a huge responsibility on their shoulders, for which they never received training as part of their medical courses. They're not really equipped to do that very well. So my personal view is it's really up to the organizations to put good practices in place and don't put it too much on the individual health worker, but they need guidance of how to deal with that. And that's something I've seen again and again completely lacking, that the organization just isn't taking responsibility for something like that. And I'm not talking so much here about an aid organization, because they generally have, but if it is something that's run under a Ministry of Health or something, there doesn't tend to be that sort of duty of care towards the whole organization and the staff. And then it seems to fall on the shoulders of the individuals, but they're really not equipped or trained, and many would argue it isn't their job to do. And I think that the difficulty in spotting these fakes, it just highlights that how much of an expertise it really is.
Yeah, and I think this, again, I think you mentioned that the need for a collaborative effort. And if we think about our traditional NGO structures where everything is siloed, it makes it impossible to deal with stuff like this. Who is responsible? Is it the health worker? Is it IT security? Is it your normal security? Is it the program director? And unless we work across this misinformation, disinformation is something that can't be dealt with by a single component.
Can I add something? It's also is regarding who are these field workers, right? And who do they deal with in day-to-day basis? It's completely different from someone that is inside our organization, as you're both mentioning. These people are in the field, or they're dealing with their families. They're talking with they're receiving information from everywhere. If they don't have proper training, it's really, really hard for them to know what's real or not. So, yes. Any considerations, any points?
I'm sorry, I have a comment. I think what's great here is you brought this experience to us, to experience this kind of chaotic situation happening all around on my screen is what's the most precious thing, I think. Yeah. And what I have here on my screen here, I want to, identify where is the truth and what to do next. And all of a sudden, I feel, I want to share my feeling at this time. I feel that there's something struggling I want to do this, I want to do that, I don't know what to do. So I think this is kind of the point of this simulation. And what we want to do next is to probably generate some ISOP what to do if this really happens, kind of things, to make people think more about what to do in real life.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's just, in training, when you do this, do you run a hot wash afterwards? So you walk through steps that could have been taken as well? For example, look, I've been in situations where I've had 5,000 emails from the public in relation to a problem in the community. And grabbing all those emails and collating were as important as dealing with it, because we needed to engage in some manner those individuals so they didn't feel that you weren't listening, even if you couldn't respond at the time. So would you do that at the end of this?
Can I save that question till the end?
Oh,
When
sure.
we finish the simulation,
Sorry.
which is just one more step, I think,
Okay.
isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's one.
Sorry.
And then, no, it's fine. It's
That's
a
a
really
good
good
question.
question. but- Yeah.
No. That was a great question. Let's continue. That was fun.
Everybody's in trouble.
So we open the room for discussion as well.
Can you get hold of Timothy?
They should take some time off.
Disciplinary process, please.
Everything's transferred.
We can see that he had good intentions though.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean.
This is a knowledge is power thing for him. Well, let's be blunt. I'm
Yes.
not suggesting it's more serious than that, but it needs to be clear to him that he does not have authority to speak on behalf of the organization.
Absolutely.
And words may be different than that, but with that meaning.
Absolutely. We see, and this is something that we see very common, like they can get these emails and instead of actually knowing what to write, they might have good intent, but we could see the outcome of that good intent. That, especially when we talk about what we discussed in the beginning about what's happening politically in a country or differences, there's a lot, and you have to take consideration of that as well. And we could see that happening right now. They don't plan for these undesired consequences. They will think, oh, you're just letting everyone know that the vaccine is here. But it's not actually, they don't realize that we have people with that intent. Points and considerations?
No, I mean, I can only add, I've seen health facilities burned down in particular in the DRC during the Ebola response. And usually the way it practically happened was that there were particular WhatsApp groups where people then were sort of putting down the time and the date when they were going to be the mob that was going to attack this health facilities. And we had at some point someone who managed to get into some of these WhatsApp groups, and then you could actually sort of see it. And but so this organizing of this would not happen in the public social media space, but in closed groups. But you know, it's this public information, it's something is happening there. Or we also had an example of a visit of a donor to one of the health facilities, and that's and that was announced in the press that this was come, and that was then going into this WhatsApp group, and the mob was called to be there. And I mean, that the film later was on the internet of how this donor car was chased through the streets. So that's how it then sort of practically happens. It's out there in the public, it goes into a private group, and then people with malicious intent can really use that to organize something. So that it has happened.
So I suppose it does again just reinforce this idea of the digital security turning into physical
Yes.
issues. And I know it's GISF, the project that it's working on at the moment is around security in a digital world. So it's not about digital security, it's about recognizing that the way we do security has to change because the world has changed and there's this digital component of it. And coming to terms with how we create this collaborative process is what a lot of organizations are struggling with.
Any points?
Maybe the fact that maybe I didn't read all the emails, but that the organization as such made it clear not to communicate with the health workers. Or, but it was clear in the sense, yeah, they send a message not to go to fake emails and not to respond and so on, but was there a clear message from the organization to say? Maybe I missed that.
No, you're right. Maybe we needed a clear message in here, in this particular email. But we usually, I think internal emails shouldn't be shared externally. I think it's an internal email. I don't know what you should.
I think, I mean, just on Radi's question, yeah, I mean, is what I think is a clear instruction as an NGO worded in a way that isn't an instruction, because we have a tendency of not wanting to tell people what they should and shouldn't do. Something that I write, believing that it is clear, doesn't necessarily mean that the person receiving it gets the same message that I wanted to say. So I think it's, if you read all of the emails from the perspective of writing this, you think, oh, it's quite clear they've been told not to share, but that's not necessarily the message in people who read it again.
And then a bit complementary to this question, why the need to spread as an organization to all health workers? The fact that vaccines, okay, this is okay, part of the exercise, I understand this, but I would, as an organization, not give this operational information when it's still ongoing, that these vaccines are coming at that time and going to that place. If you already have some incidents with good intent and also people that fell for the fake emails, then you should also, as an organization, contain this information. Just a general thought on this.
And I think, again, it goes back to, we get conflicting messages within organizations. We should be transparent, we should be accountable, we should give people all of the information. But then do they know what they can and can't do with the information? And again, I think the value of the interactive training is it does allow you an opportunity to feel and take the emotions and see what your reactions might be.
I think as well, in an organization understanding, there's a difference between a dialogue in a strategic situation versus an operational situation. And when it becomes operational like this, then the dialogue changes. And I think it's making sure people understand that. Because in that strategic discussion, how are we going to handle wide open dialogue when it's an operational matter? If I looked here and I realized why you didn't have someone take the lead, you said we were going to hear from the chief, whatever, we never do really. So I think because it forces people to then do something about it, which is really important. But I think in this case, that clarity around this is a situation where you shall not. Most organizations understand it's a different behavior than there is in a strategic discussion about, you know, when we're engaged by the public about it, then here's how we'll respond. So I think that's important as well.
And I just think, just to add to this, and again, with what we were talking about with Radi, is if we think that this person is a Nigerian health worker, how good's their English? And how well are we translating these messages? And if there's a little bit of ambiguity in the first place, how are they translated? And I think we don't put enough emphasis on good translation, I think, a lot of the time, or because people have basic English, the belief that they will pick up on the nuances and understand those differences.
want to make a point out of this. This is just the wrap up of the final point of the exercise. So this is we're almost reaching the end. Yes, yes.
But here's a perfect example, if I may, in your final email, you don't need to give details about. Absolutely wrong message. You shall not provide information on. As an example, and we talk about ambiguity because that's very ambiguous. That doesn't mean I won't. It means
Yes.
I can make a decision. It's not a decision to be made.
And change the.
Oh, I thought you threw that in, so we pick it up, sorry.
No, it is really good because that's the point of all of these discussions. Ideally, and I think Lisa mentioned about translation. It is something that we often, and we don't even have to go that far, because even internally, like when we talk about
They don't need to.
organizations, we face these kinds of situations where even employees are sharing information, even though they shouldn't, with external people. So it's good to have those points. Basically, in this case, sometimes health workers, when we created this exercise, and we will dive, and sorry to bring already the discussion, this was the last point. If you can feel free to write the last post. When we created this exercise, it was focused on an organization where the health workers, they view, it's not that they have the freedom, but they can communicate, but they should know how and what to communicate in this case. And hence why, but I agree with you that they should never give details. They should emphasize that point.
But I think the health workers probably have to be equipped with good instructions of how to respond to questions from patients they're seeing. Because if these stories are out there, they will be asked like, can I trust you? Can I touch this? So they need to have speaking points of how to engage with the patient. So of course they shouldn't go on social media, but they need to know what to say because they're seeing one person after the next in real life, and that's also very challenging for organizations how to provide that information.
Yeah, it's difficult to communicate a different opinion when someone's very vocal and set in their ways, right? And to do that respectfully is quite challenging.
It says here that they need to show feelings, but it doesn't say what kind of feelings, and and I would be very worried that people please show feelings when writing. There could be a lot of feelings out there. Might feel about this vaccination, but they are doing as they've been told.
It's very true.
And another funny detail is that this team leader, Miss Nasiru Kamala, in my native language, Finnish, it means horrible.
May I ask what's your native language?
Finnish.
Finnish. So we need to change her last name. Okay, so we are approaching the end of this session, and then we are going to open for discussion.
I think just to sort of, I suppose, wrap up, and go back to your question about how to use the training. The discussions that we've had with Conducttr on all of the scenarios that we've put together, we've tried to build them in a way that you can either do it like this. So you show a bit, you stop, you have a discussion with the participants, and then you do a bit more, or you let them run it from start to finish and you debrief at the end. So it's sort of at what point, if this is the first time that you're doing this sort of training, you probably want to do it like this in bits and pieces, because it's much more of a learning experience. If you want it to be very experiential, then you run it from start to finish, because then the stress builds up and you don't have these points where you let it out. But I would say definitely you'd want to have some form of debriefing at the end, so people have an opportunity to process what they've been through as well, and I think that's quite important. And I think this is why they all end up on sort of some form of ending, not always fully happy ending, but that people know, so they're not taking away. And anyone who's done sort of simulation-based training, and if it's not wrapped up properly, you go away thinking, so I know the last time I did a heat training, I was doing first aid on somebody and it was stopped, and nobody told me whether what I'd been doing was right or wrong, and whether this patient survived or not. And I really carried that around with me for quite a long time, even knowing that it was a simulation exercise. So I think we've also found it very important that we wrap these things up so there's a finish that people take away with them. I mean, for me, your thoughts on the training would be really interesting, and how useful and how you think you might use it if you would.
Now?
Yeah. No, you don't have to use it now, but
Look, I think this will be spectacular in the policing world. Either both in developing police leaders, but even in selection criteria for police leadership. Like it's, I think it would be spot on.
that's a really interesting idea. Yesterday, in the session when we were talking about inclusion, and we were talking about the recruitment processes and how do you bring in the right people in recruitment, it never occurred to me to use it in a recruitment exercise. But I think that's a really good idea.
It's first one of the week, so. For me.
I have a question. With a ex-Redar hat on, this feels useful to utilise within Redar's own training. That, however, is paid for by other people. Redar is a GISF member. Would that be permissible to use it?
I think that would have to be a one-to-one conversation in terms of how it's done and the cost recovery component. GISF is picking up the annual cost. I mean, what happened is we had a negotiation with Conducttr, and they went, this is how much it would cost, and we went, this is how much we can afford. So it was developed for GISF at a much lower cost, and GISF is picking up the annual fee. Whether there's an opportunity to cost share a bit with Redar on that annual fee, because the other thing that we would like to do is we've got one more scenario within the agreement, the current agreement, which we were thinking of doing a more in-depth cyber attack. However, this one is quite good, so I'm not sure. The other one we've talked about is a safeguarding issue. So if we have the opportunity to have more funds to develop more scenarios, so that might be something that we could think about doing with Redar. There's a particular scenario that we could then host in this site.
I will talk to them. Now I'm no longer them.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this?
Maybe something rather technical. So I found it super interesting, and I will have tons of things to bring back to my team and do a special session about bells that were ringing. I found it a bit lengthy, in a sense that at some point you understand, okay, people shouldn't go on social media, they shouldn't do things, and we should get an official statement.
Yes.
So once you have decided for yourself, I decided for myself, okay, I will not comment on anything out there, but then it sort of turns around. So I think that could be something a bit more condensed. You don't necessarily need 70, 80 minutes to get people understand that.
Absolutely. It's up to how you run your exercise in the end and how you
Create it as well.
and how you create it as well.
I think what we haven't done here is shown you all of the back end of
Yes.
how it works. My understanding as a complete idiot, so is you can speed stuff up and slow it down, and you can choose how many different interventions you want to put in. And there's nothing stopping you going, I'm just going to run the first 10 minutes of this.
Yeah.
And I think this is so much more to discuss once this is going. I mean, one of these conversations about trying to move away from one-off trainings and ongoing ones. You could take 10 minutes of this and do it once a month with a group of people. So you break it down that way. So you then, the repetition helps because it reinforces what they learned last time. So I think this is the flexibility of the system in that you can really sort of almost cut and paste it. And you can either send the link out to everybody and they just do it and you bring them together for a Zoom meeting at the end. Or as somebody responsibility, you can use it within a training room as we've done it sort of here and do it sort of live with a group of people. So hopefully it's very flexible in terms of how you can use it.
And if I
I
may
mean,
add-
what-
oh, sorry.
No, what I was thinking is that it could be quite interesting to think of different responsibilities. So you have health coordinators. Who would be
Yes.
responsible of managing, who do I tell that the vaccine have arrived and you should know that. And then you have the frontline health workers, and maybe one version could be you divide the room and some people have to manage the others and
Yeah, I was just gonna
yes.
suggest that, like,
Yeah.
is there an opportunity for, rather than the team leader being a virtual person, whether someone in your team can take that role
yeah.
and see how they respond in a real life situation, in a leadership situation.
If I may add to it, and adding to your both contributions. And I would like to thank Maria, because Maria was role playing as multiple stakeholders in this exercise.
Who was player 6?
So one of the things that you can have is in your exercise control team, you can have different people acting as actors, could be real actors, could be, as Maria was role playing, she was role playing as multiple actors in this case at the same time, but you can have subject matter experts acting as different people. And also, is again, on my view, I could see what everyone was doing. And I can add layers of engagement to it. So I can step, I can choose it, I can jump the pace of the exercise. So it's really up to you how you run depending on your organization, how you like this to run depending on your organization.
And I think that we chose this one because it is quite single person, you can do it. The other scenarios are designed for crisis management teams. So part of the introduction is, you know, what is your role on the crisis management team? Are you just sort of a generic crisis manager? Or are you the comms person? Are you the human resources or family liaison person? So it's sort of, but the other exercises are more team designed, but there's no reason why you couldn't do that with this one, I think, yeah. Interesting idea.
Yeah, and just to sort of add to that, because I think your point was that the learning for the frontline person is relatively simple, don't. Whereas the learning for the coordinator is very complex. How do you deal with that? Because there's a lot to manage, but at the front line, you know, okay, I should step back. And yeah, so that's where I think that'd be very interesting to sort of bring in how do you actually do it beyond you shouldn't.
I'm not sure which organisations you belong to. There are familiar faces, but I'm trying to remember which organisations you work for. If you are GISF members and you want to find out more how to access this, do come and talk to me. If you're not a GISF, well, you possibly don't even know whether you're a GISF member, because a lot of organisations have no idea. But if you want to find out more, yeah, just come and talk to me or reach out to the GISF team.